Hey, name's Philip. I built everything my family stands on, but at the Christmas party, my daughter-in-law looked me dead in the eye and called me a parasite. My own blood watched, silent. They'd already changed the deed, moved money behind my back, and told folks I was too old to understand. But when the waiter leaned in and said, "Welcome, owner," something cracked. Want to know what happened next? The invitation came late, folded crooked in a cheap white envelope, no return address, and my name spelled Phillips with an S. After all these years, after all I gave, that's how they remembered me, or didn't. I sat in the back seat of the Uber, staring at the streetlights sliding past, thinking about how this used to be my neighborhood, my block. Now the banquet hall I helped raise brick by brick stood tall in the heart of Third Ward, repainted, rebranded, and reclaimed by folks who wore my last name but didn't carry my legacy. The valet opened my door with a polite nod. I stepped into a warm gust of jazz, the kind of live quartet that used to play on Sundays at the old community center. The scent hit me hard. Gumbo, baked turkey, something sweet like sweet potato pie. A mix that could make you believe family still meant something. Inside, the walls shimmered with heritage quilts, all stitched with the stories of our people. There were smiles and laughter, but not for me. A few heads turned, then turned away. Marisol was the first to approach, arms out but eyes cold. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said, laughing like it was a joke. "I was invited," I said, smiling the kind of smile that hurts your cheeks. "Barely," she said under her breath, loud enough for me to hear. "Bless your heart, we didn't think you'd come. Thought maybe you'd be tired, at your age. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family." That line echoed in my head as I followed a young host toward the tables. He moved fast, weaving through people who pretended not to see me. Then I saw the seat, way in the back, near the kitchen door, across from the restroom. I sat down quietly. Each swing of the kitchen door brought clattering trays, the thick smell of bleach, and a cold draft that hit my ankles. From the restroom came the distant sound of a hand dryer, too loud for the music playing. The jazz was muffled back here, like it too didn't belong in this corner. The hall used to be smaller when we first built it. I remembered laying the foundation, hammering in beams with men whose hands had calluses like mine. Back then, we knew every inch of this place. Now I couldn't even get a seat near the center. I straightened my tie, nodded at a server passing by. A young girl offered a tired smile, but she didn't stop. People looked at me like I was a stranger. They glanced, they whispered, but not one came to say, "Welcome." Not one called me by name. And yet, I remembered every penny I lent Dorian when he said college wouldn't wait. I remembered covering their first mortgage, letting them sign papers on land I still owned, just so they'd have a home. They got the title. I got the silence. I shifted in my seat and took a deep breath. The draft caught the back of my neck. A man's worth ain't in the chair they seat him in, but in the ground he's built beneath it. That's what Big Leon used to say when folks forgot who put in the work. Marisol laughed again, louder this time. "Some folks just don't know when to let go, even if they ain't paid a bill in years," she told a guest at the head table, eyes flicking toward me like I was a joke dressed in church clothes. I didn't flinch. Let her talk. I remembered the night I signed the last check for that mortgage. They were 2 weeks from losing the house, said they'd pay me back, said it was temporary. I saw Dorian raise a glass at the head table. A toast. Everyone leaned in, laughing. No one called me over. No one even looked my way. A waiter, young, new, maybe 19, came over and said, "Sir, are you done setting the tables?" I blinked. He thought I was staff. I gave him a small nod and waved him off, watched him disappear through the swinging kitchen door. The bleach smell came back with him. I clenched my hand under the table, let the anger rise, then swallowed it. Not tonight. Tonight I'd watch. I'd remember. Then I saw it. The napkin on my plate, folded into a maple leaf shape, my signature fold. I taught them that back when we hosted fundraisers here. But tonight, it sat crooked, sloppy, uncared for. I reached for it, adjusted the edges with the slow precision of a man who remembers what things used to be. I didn't belong here, but this was still my house. I built this hall brick by brick. Tonight, they've seated me by the kitchen, but tomorrow, they'll know whose house they're standing in. I pulled out my phone, sent a quick text to Kenzie. Just arrived. They sat me in the back. No reply. I tucked the phone away, took a sip of lukewarm water. Then I sat still and watched the party unfold like I was watching strangers play dress-up in a story that used to be mine. As Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The clatter from the kitchen, the laughter from the head table, it all faded behind the thought forming in my mind. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The waiter passed again. I picked up the crooked napkin, smoothed it with steady hands, and whispered under my breath, "This is my house. They just don't know it yet." The sound of silverware clinking and low laughter pulled me out of the thought like a hand tapping my shoulder. I was still holding the napkin, my old maple leaf fold, now limp between my fingers. The jazz had slipped into something slower, and the noise of the party carried on like I wasn't even there. I set the napkin down, pushed my chair back slowly, and stood. No one noticed. That used to bother me. Not anymore. I stepped out into the lobby, said something about needing fresh air. Truth was, I needed to see it for myself. The plaque. The one I'd stood beside with my wife the day we cut the ribbon. Her hand in mine, the cameras, the smiles, all the sweat and sacrifice, tangible, hammered into the wall for anyone to read. Except now, it was gone. Where my name used to be carved in brass. Philip Gaston, founding donor, there was a slick, newer plaque, polished to a showroom shine. The Gaston Family Center, Esteen 2017. No first name, no story, just a brand. I stared, took a breath so deep it hurt my ribs. This wasn't a mistake, this was calculated. I remembered the call 2 years ago. Dorian mentioning renovations, saying they'd refresh the space, modernize the image. I didn't ask questions then. Maybe part of me didn't want the answers. Now I knew. They erased me. They can take my name off the wall, I muttered, but they can't take my memory out this brick. Behind me, the door swung open and closed as people came and went, nobody looking twice. A couple servers passed, whispering. I heard the family got this place dirt cheap, one said, from some old guy who didn't know better. I didn't turn around, just tucked my hands into my pockets and kept walking, slow. My shoes echoed down the hallway I paid for. By the time I circled back toward the ballroom, my mind was no longer in the past. It was surveying, watching, calculating. I slid back into my seat like nothing had happened, folded my hands, scanned the room. And then a voice next to me. "You all right, sir?" I looked up. Young man, maybe 20, tie a little too tight. Nervous eyes, but genuine. "My name's Orion," he said. "I work part-time here. Always wondered who Mr. Gaston was. They said this place was built by a legend." I looked at him. Long enough for him to feel it, but not long enough to scare him off. "You take good care of this place?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, sir. Always. Place has history." I just smiled and gave a small nod. Didn't correct him. Didn't say, "It's me." Didn't need to. Respect lives in how people treat you, not how loud they say your name. He left me with a warm nod, and something in me settled. Not peace, strategy. Because now I saw the pieces moving, and I wasn't out the game yet. Back at the table, the cold draft returned. Same kitchen door swinging, same bleach in the air, but it felt different now. I wasn't waiting, I was watching. The pictures along the wall had changed too. Glossy prints of Dorian with community leaders, Marisol shaking hands at ribbon cuttings, My face was nowhere, not even in the group shots. I listed what else was missing. The bench my wife picked out for the front lobby, gone. The stained glass panel from the original church window, replaced. My past, swapped out like outdated furniture. But one thing they didn't change, the land. They wanted the property, the legacy, the shine. Let them try and take it the right way. Then I caught a voice near the head table. Dorian's planning to remodel next year, someone said. Put his name on the front this time. Finally make it his. And there it was. Not gratitude, not stewardship, ambition. I looked at the table like I was staring through it. Through the linen, the centerpieces, the fake smiles and polished shoes. You built this house off my foundation. You just forgot I still have the blueprint. As the jazz faded into something almost melancholy, I leaned back, folded my hands, and let my mind go quiet. Not broken, not bitter, but calculating. Because the thing about a foundation is, it can still shake a house when it wants to. There was a time not too long ago, spring I think, when Dorian invited us all over for a family brunch. I should have known then. It wasn't the eggs or the homemade grits that gave it away. It was the whiteboard in the corner, the little clicker in his hand, the nervous energy thick in the room. That wasn't brunch. That was a presentation. I sat at the far end of the table next to a window looking out over their manicured yard. Felt like I was watching a performance. Dorian stood tall in his fitted blazer, voice smooth and polished, talking about honoring legacy, revitalizing impact, and building something scalable. Slides flicked by, renderings, bar graphs, buzzwords, and not once did he say the words, my father. He said, our founding vision. He said, the family property. But he never looked at me. Renetta, his wife, chimed in with her usual sparkle. We've got to modernize the name. Young folks get confused when they see community anything. Sounds like a nursing home. Some chuckled. I didn't. I watched. Even my youngest, Andre, avoided my eyes. Just kept staring at his phone, nodding like it all made sense. And when I tried gently to ask how they planned to handle legal zoning, Dorian cut in with a chuckle. Come on, Pops. We're not doing business like it's still 94. Everyone laughed. I smiled. But something in me began to pull back. Later that day, someone, I don't even remember who, half joked, you still sharp enough to handle all those deeds and contracts, old man? There was laughter again, louder this time. I played along, tilted my head, grinned, said, sharper than you know. But something inside me hardened. I went home that evening and sat on the porch, watching the dusk. Thought about every dime I'd poured into that building, the nights I skipped sleep, the checks I wrote from an account that stayed empty so theirs could be full. That wasn't a family meeting. It was a coronation. And I wasn't invited to the throne. You don't retire a legacy, you build on it, or you rob it blind. Back in the present, the music inside had picked up again. I walked past the bar on my way to the restroom, moving slower now. My knees weren't what they used to be, but my ears, they caught everything. Renetta was leaned in close to her cousin, drink in hand, whispering over the hum of conversation. I don't think he even remembers signing the papers, she said, laughing. That's why we pushed it through while he was sick. He just nodded and signed. I stopped walking. Sick. Pneumonia. 6 months ago. I'd been in that damn recliner, wrapped in blankets, coughing up a storm. Dorian had brought over soup. Said he just needed my signature for insurance updates. Thick folder. I didn't even lift the pages. Trusted him. My own son. You used my sickness to steal my sanity, I whispered. My mouth was dry. I turned and walked to the restroom, slower than before. Every step felt like a page turning in a book I hadn't finished writing. In the mirror, under that buzzing light, I didn't see an old man. I saw the man who built the house they were feasting in. Brick by brick, dollar by dollar. I saw every sacrifice, every no I told myself to say yes to them. They didn't forget me, they erased me, and they thought I wouldn't notice. Marcus used to say, the new generation don't want your story, they just want your spoils. I used to think he was bitter. Maybe he just saw it sooner. Back in the hallway, I pulled out my phone. Texted Nathaniel, my old attorney. Nothing big. Just, Merry Christmas, brother. Let's grab coffee soon. Let the seeds sprout slow. Let them think I'm still fading. But inside, something was waking up. This wasn't about a plaque or a party. This was about betrayal. And the story wasn't over. As I wiped my hands under that buzzing fluorescent light, I looked myself in the eye, not as a victim, but as a man with unfinished business. I had stepped out for just a minute. The music inside still hummed its hollow tune, and I needed air that wasn't soaked in pretense. As I passed near the back entrance, I saw them, two security staff escorting Kenzie out the side door. No fanfare, no noise, just quiet disrespect. Kenzie looked calm, like a man who'd already made peace with his decision. 20 years he'd worked alongside me, mowing the grass, fixing the back fence after that 2010 storm, and making sure the plumbing didn't betray us during the summer rush. He wasn't just help, he was loyal, solid, family. I froze, tucked back in the hallway shadows. Flash hit me. 2 weeks ago, Kenzie told me Marisol asked him to clean out the storage closet near the office. Said she told him to throw out old junk. That junk turned out to be deed folders, originals with my name typed clean across the top. He refused. Mr. Gaston, he'd said back then, I ain't tossing your name in no trash. He stood his ground. And now he was being walked out like a thief. He caught sight of me, just a nod, not sad, not scared, but it said enough. They don't just silence your voice, I thought. They fire your witnesses. I wanted to step forward, raise hell, but I didn't. I stood there, fists tight, jaw locked. I needed to know how deep the knife had gone before I pulled it out. I made my way back in. As I reached the edge of the main hall, a small hand tugged my coat. Cale, my youngest grandson, his eyes big, voice small but loud enough to echo. Granddad, who is Mr. Phillip again? Time stopped. The table behind me went quiet. Silverware paused midair. Someone let out a soft gasp. I felt every eye pivot. That boy. I was there the day he was born. I'd held him before the nurse cleaned him off. I whispered Grandpa in his tiny ear before he could form words. And now he looked at me like I was a guest. My name, my legacy, reduced to a stranger's echo. Before I could speak, Marisol chuckled, sharp and quick, like a knife being sheathed. He's just a friend of the family, baby, don't worry. I stared at her, didn't blink. The room shifted, just a little. Uncomfortable glances, some guests pretending they hadn't heard. I raised my glass. My hand trembled slightly, not from age, but restraint. I cleared my throat, thought I'd say something. But instead, I set the glass down. Gently, I looked her in the eye. We'll talk later, I said, in private. And I walked off. Not a single word more. Let them sit in the silence they'd built. I moved through the back corridor. Quiet steps, but everyone hit harder than the last. Not just my name erased, not just my voice dismissed. But now, they were training the next generation to forget me entirely. I leaned against the hallway wall, thought about what this all meant. Firing Kenzie, dismissing me, telling Cale I was just some friend. That wasn't clumsiness. That was calculated. Marcus used to say, you don't just watch how folks treat you. You watch who they silence when they speak truth. Kenzie was the first casualty. I took a breath, pulled out my phone, sent a message to Rowena. Something's going down tonight. Watch closely. Then I noticed something on the table by the side wall, a folded maple leaf napkin, clean, untouched. Next to it, an unused microphone. A moment meant to be spoken, but not yet. I picked up the napkin, held it in my hand. They can block the mic, but they can't unbuild what I built. As I stepped past the microphone, I saw two staff wheeling in a projector cart. The screen read, "Welcome to the new era," and I knew exactly what they were about to do. I didn't change out of my suit, didn't take off my shoes, didn't even turn the hallway light on when I got home. Just walked straight through the dark, into my study, and shut the door behind me. That room hadn't changed much in years. Still had the smell of old pine and printer dust. My desk, cluttered like always. A stack of tax returns from '08, still leaning crooked in the corner, never filed proper. I reached behind those books, third shelf, left side. There was a panel underneath that wobbled if you pulled it just right. Behind it, a thick brown envelope. Been there for over a decade. Labeled it myself in red ink, in case of betrayal. I slid the contents out, paper still crisp. A certified deed, dated July 1986, with my full name typed clean across the top. No cosigners, no trusts, no ambiguity. I flipped through the legal jargon until I landed on the clause I remembered. Transfer of ownership contingent on proven cognitive competence of sole owner. Didn't need a lawyer to translate that. I didn't smile, didn't feel relieved. I felt sharpened, like something inside me had clicked into place. "You don't hand over the throne," I muttered, just because they brought a new crown. I didn't sleep that night. Stayed up reviewing every page, making digital scans, organizing folders, and prepping one thing they didn't expect: the truth with teeth. By morning, I was dressed and back in the car, heading not to breakfast but war. The banquet hall was quiet at first, a few staff setting up trays of catered sandwiches, humming low to themselves. The upstairs conference room, though, buzzed like a nest of busy bees. Dorian stood at the head of the long table, presenting slides on a screen. Gastonia Group Est 2024, the title read. PowerPoint, charts, branding colors. It all looked polished, empty. I opened the door without knocking. Heads turned. I walked slow, deliberate, up to the front, next to Dorian. Then I laid the deed on the table. Silence. "You've got 72 hours to retract any filings made in my name," I said, voice steady. "Or I'll see you all in court." Marisol opened her mouth, probably to deflect or spin, but I pulled out the second document. A notarized revocation of the power of attorney, dated yesterday. I looked at Dorian. "If you think a father's silence is the same as surrender," I said, "you've miscalculated." No one spoke, just the soft whir of the ceiling fan turning over stale air and broken trust. I didn't wait for applause, didn't need a response. I turned toward the exit, pausing only to glance at the young staff. A few looked away. A few nodded, just a little. Respect don't need volume. It knows how to whisper. In the hallway, Rowena stepped out of the shadows. She'd been nearby, notebook in hand. "Was that the opening or the end game?" she asked. I didn't break stride. It's the knock before the door gets kicked in. By the time I reached my car, the scans were already sent to my lawyer and CC'd directly to Dorian. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. I didn't answer. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where my father used to sip instant coffee with bread and syrup. I remembered something he once told me, one of those sayings you ignore when you're young and cling to when you're older. Never teach 'em all your moves in one game. I knew they'd come back harder, not yelling, not loud, but quiet, precise. Somewhere across town, I pictured Dorian pacing and Marisol cooking up damage control. I was right. That same night, in their living room, Marisol leaned in close, whispering, "We go public. We make him look confused. Leak that hospital video. Let folks think he's not all there." Dorian didn't blink. Just nodded. Back in my house, I pulled up an old video on my phone. Kale's birthday 2 years ago. Big Papa, he'd shouted, cake all over his face. My throat tightened. One tear slid out, not from sadness, from focus. That name mattered. That memory mattered. I wasn't just reclaiming property. I was reclaiming place. I woke before sunrise, long before the city stirred. The air had that sharp October bite, the kind that makes you pull your collar up even in Texas. I brewed a single mug of black coffee and left it untouched on the counter. My hands were steady as I picked up my keys. Today wasn't about nostalgia or regret. Today was about facts. The drive to the county clerk's office was quiet. No radio, no music, just the hum of the tires and my own breathing. I parked far from the entrance, sat for a moment, and stared at the glass doors. This was a building I'd been in many times back when I bought and registered properties, always on my terms. Inside, I asked for access to recent amendments on the banquet hall's deed. The clerk, a young man with a thin tie, hesitated, glanced at his screen, and then went to the back. He returned with a fresh filing dated 3 weeks ago. My name sat there, under a signature I didn't remember giving, transferring co-ownership to Dorian. I scanned the page, reading every detail, date, notary. Both names rang false. They counted on me never checking, I thought. That was their biggest mistake. I kept my face still, asked for certified copies, watched him make them, slipped them into a folder, and snapped photos with my phone. Evidence, immediate and cold. I walked out into the bright sun, feeling not panic but precision, like a man taking aim. At home, the house felt heavier than usual. I sat at the kitchen table with my cooled coffee, staring at nothing. On the fridge still hung a photo of my wife holding KL as a baby. She'd warned me back then, half joking, people only circle when they smell you slowing down. I pulled out my phone, sent the forged documents to my attorney. Drafted a short letter for formal legal action, typed slow, chose every word like a nail in a board. Then my phone buzzed, Rowena calling. "You're trending online," she said. And not in a good way. Before I could ask, she texted a link. I opened it. A video filled my screen. Me, in a hospital gown, 6 months ago. I was hooked to IVs, tired, disoriented. Asking a nurse, "What day is it?" The clip cut off before she answered. The caption read, "Local businessman can't remember his own name." My jaw clenched. The comments scrolled fast, mean, casual. "He's too old to run a business." This what happens when you don't retire at 70. Dorian should take over before his dad loses the building. It was a hit job, clean and professional. I dialed KL. He answered on the second ring, voice small. They said it was just a misunderstanding. I didn't know they'd post it. Even my grandson softened. I kept my tone calm. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "We'll talk soon." And I hung up. I stared at the phone, whispered to myself, "Let's see how long they hold their nerve." That night, I opened a new document on my laptop. Labeled it, Plan B, executing before they do. Bullet points formed under my fingers, public reappearance, clean, confident, factual, a schedule. Evidence release timed with my statement. I sent a private message to Rowena. "Ready for an interview? Just you and me? Uncut." I leaned back. They wanted me to be quiet, confused, compliant. I would be none of those. On the shelf sat an old photo of my mother, hands on her hips in the doorway of our first house. She'd written on the back, "Silence is the last step before erasure." I pressed the photo flat against the desk, felt the paper edges against my palms. The fire inside me wasn't flaring wild anymore. It was steady, hot, and focused. When you've been lied on in front of the world, the truth has to speak louder than your pain. I arrived 15 minutes early. Not because I was nervous, but because I needed to look the moment in the eye before it looked back at me. The studio lights were already hot, cameras aligned, mics checked. I stood still in the wings, watching the team bustle around Rowena as she rehearsed her intro lines. My suit was pressed, simple, and sharp. No flair, just clean dignity. That's all I wanted to carry in with me. When Rowena turned and saw me, she gave a short nod. She wasn't just a journalist that day, she was my witness. She knew what this meant. "Good morning, Mr. Gaston," she greeted as the lights dimmed slightly and the show went live. The audience clapped, soft, unsure, but I didn't come for their cheers. I stepped forward, met the gaze of the room and the lens. I started slow, steady. I never asked for applause, only for recognition. She opened. "Mr. Gaston, why come forward now?" I didn't dodge. "Legacy," I said. "Because when your name's been dragged through the dirt by your own blood, silence ain't peace, it's erasure." I looked directly at the camera. There have been rumors, half-truths. Some say I've lost my step. I haven't. I've lost my patience. Rowena glanced to the producer's booth, gave a subtle cue. Behind me, a screen came to life. The hospital clip played. I didn't turn around. I'd already seen it. The audience gasped as my voice, weak and tired, asked, "What day is it?" When it ended, Rowena hesitated, unsure if I'd speak. I did. That clip was taken while I was recovering from surgery. I was under medication. It was a moment of vulnerability, edited to humiliate me. I reached beside me and unfolded a document. This here is from a licensed video forensics firm. Timestamp mismatches, cut edits. That clip wasn't truth. It was sabotage. One panelist leaned forward. "And how do we know your so-called proof isn't stage 2? I didn't flinch. "Because the pen doesn't lie, and I still have the ink." The audience was dead quiet, but not empty quiet, listening quiet. Then something unexpected. Another panelist, an independent journalist, adjusted her glasses. "Actually, I pulled some records too, from 2009. Marisol Gaston's name came up in a contract breach suit. She settled quietly. Owed over $130,000. Non-delivery of services." Murmurs broke out. That was the first crack. I didn't gloat. I just leaned forward. While I was pushed aside, truth was traded for silence. If anyone wants to inherit what I built, they need to bring their records too. I didn't yell. Didn't need to. Backstage, Marisol's team scrambled. I could almost hear the panic through the glass. Within minutes, a statement was issued from her office calling the interview selective, manipulative, and emotionally exploitative. But the tide had already turned. On the studio screen, trending tags flashed. Hashtag Gastonia Truth climbing by the second. People weren't just watching. They were choosing. Rowena leaned in. "They're swinging in your favor now." I nodded once. "Truth is the only weapon that outlives a lie." I closed the interview with thanks. No rehearsed lines, just clarity. As I stood up, I knew something had shifted. The narrative wasn't being written about me anymore. I was writing it. I walked past the crew, past the lights, into the lobby. Phones were already up, flashes starting. Marisol was caught on a feed, walking out another exit, head down, avoiding reporters. But me? I faced the cameras, because now the fight wasn't behind closed doors. I stood just outside the ballroom, watching the shadows play across the glass doors. Inside, voices stirred like restless wind. My name was being whispered like a ghost story, half belief, half disbelief. I waited for the music to fade, for the MC to pause, for her to speak. Marisol's voice cut through the air like polished steel. "Tonight, we celebrate a new beginning for this foundation, a new era of Gaston leadership." I opened the door and stepped in. The lights dimmed, as if they too knew it was time. The spotlight swung off her and landed on me. My feet moved slow, purposeful, no hesitation. She caught sight of me and froze mid-sentence. Eyes narrowed. Grip tightened on the podium. I kept walking. took my place at the microphone. The room fell into hush like a congregation waiting on scripture. "I won't take much of your time," I said, "but I will take back mine." I held up the legal folder. "This morning, I revoked the deed transfer. Filed it officially with the county." More murmurs. Some gasps. Cameras clicked. I unfolded the contract and read, slow and clear. "No transfer without proven capacity and consent." That's what it says. That's what the law requires. I turned toward her. "I built this. My sweat is in the wood. My soul is in the name, and I will not be erased." No applause yet. Just stillness. Then behind me, the large screen on stage lit up. Footage began to roll. Her voice, her face, her instructions. Marisol, cornering office staff, pushing for file changes, urging calls be made, orders to deceive, to confuse me, to get me to sign what I didn't understand. She tried to keep still, but I saw the shake in her hand, the tightness in her jaw. "They say power whispers," I said without turning around. "But y'all screamed it in back rooms." Dorian stood halfway, like he wanted to walk out and stay at the same time. "I taught you better than this," I said, eyes on him. People in the audience started speaking. "She lied. That's elder abuse. He was set up." I stepped forward, let my voice reach the back rows. "When somebody trims your legacy," I said, "you don't wait, you pull the roots." And just like that, the room moved. People stood up, one by one. Some raised signs. "He was robbed. Truth don't hide." The moderator tried to settle things. I raised my hand. Let them speak. Applause built, not forced, not polite. It grew like a wave, swallowed the walls. She couldn't hide anymore, not behind her makeup, not behind her title. I didn't smile, didn't bow, just gave a small nod. This wasn't vindication. It was recognition. And that was enough. After the clapping slowed, I stepped down. Flashes from the press followed, but I didn't stop. On my way out, I passed Kenzie. She didn't say a word, just gave me a look that said, "I see now." Orion, wiping glasses near the bar, gave a small nod too. That one meant respect. Backstage, Marisol waited, voice lower now, tighter. "This isn't over," she said. I didn't flinch. It was never over. It was just hidden. I stepped past her and into the night. Rain had started, light and sharp, slicing through the heat like truth through lies. Behind me, the applause still echoed. But I didn't turn around. I walked. Because some victories don't shout. They walk quiet beside you. The next morning came quiet. No crowds, no cameras. Just the soft hush of light slipping through the rebuilt shutters in my study. Those same wooden slats I'd once installed with my own hands, now back where they belonged. I sat on the edge of my bed for a moment, letting the stillness settle. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a cup of black coffee, steam curling like breath. The newspaper sat folded by the door. I picked it up, and there it was, front page. "Gaston stands tall, truth restored." I smiled, but not wide. Just enough to feel the corners of my mouth ease. "Not bitter," I muttered, taking a sip. "Just better." I picked up my phone and called Orion. He answered on the second ring. "Took you long enough, old man." I chuckled. "Just wanted to thank you." He paused, then said softer, "It's about time somebody stood up," and stayed up. On my desk sat a thick leather folder. No dust, no stains, no fingerprints, but mine. Inside were the official documents for the Gaston Community Resilience Fund. I flipped it open. Read the names on the founding board. Every one of them had shown up for me when my own kin turned away. Not a single blood relative in sight. Didn't need 'em. Later that morning, I drove down to the new community center. Not just any center. This was Gaston House, Rebuild, Reach, Rise. That name didn't come from a focus group. It came from lived experience. The crowd outside was small, but real. I saw kids with their shirts tucked in, old men leaning on canes, women holding babies, a couple former inmates nodding like they finally had a place they could be seen. I stepped up, no podium, just me. I used to think legacy was about what you leave behind, I said, but now I know. Legacy's what you build while you still breathe. They didn't clap. They just stood there nodding, letting the words land. Felt better than applause. Marisol wasn't there. Probably too proud or too embarrassed. Dorian sent a 2-line email that morning. Some half-hearted apology. No greeting, no signature. I read it, then hit delete. Kenzie stood near the front. Told me she was leading workshops now, helping older black men learn how to handle their finances, rebuild confidence, reclaim space. I handed her a rolled-up blueprint. It's the mural, I said. I want her in the center. This place doesn't exist without her. Kenzie unrolled it, tears welled up. She'd be proud, she whispered. I didn't answer, just looked at the wall where it would hang. That afternoon, I drove alone to the cemetery, pulled up slow, no music, just the crunch of gravel under tires. I brought fresh roses, red ones, laid them down, careful. I told you I'd make it right, I whispered. Took longer than it should have, but I got there. I sat for a while, thought about the fights I'd picked and the ones I'd let go. You don't gotta win every battle, I said to the stone, just the ones that matter. The sun started to dip, light filtered through branches, soft and golden. Then I heard a small voice. Mister, the kid said, tugging at his toy truck, is this your park? I looked at him, maybe 5, maybe 6. Big eyes, whole future ahead. I smiled. Nah, kid, this your park now. He grinned and ran off. Behind him, Gaston House stood tall. Children laughed inside. The mural of my wife catching light from the late sun, her eyes watching over it all. And as I turned to walk away, I wasn't carrying sorrow anymore. I was carrying her spirit,